from Julio's, one of his. So I have two that I'm going to give away. And I've had mine framed, and it's beautiful. So anyway, that's it.
So the first number is, I wonder if they all are 245. I bet they are. 242 5379. 5379. We have a winner. Okay, this gift is from Christine.
CDs.
It's her CDs. Shh, it's a secret. 2425383. Okay, the next number. Thank you. Do I need to say anything special?
From the book review. Book review in the village. Book review book. Beachview Books.
Beachview Books in the Village, 2425558. There we go. She's coming. You start doing? Okay, I'm going to start calling number. You're just going to have to come get it. 2425402. 5402. Do we have a winner? We got a winner. Did you call that? 242-5420. 5420. Come on down. Bath and Body Works. 242-5461. 5461. From a local artist. 242-5418. 5418. We have a winner. Five 542.
Another CD from Christine.
Another CD from Christine. 5542. We had two 5542s. Yeah. Oh, we had two. You get two then. Okay, next number is 5528. 5447. 242-5447. How many more we got? And then 5. Do we have any more? Okay, last one.
Do you need this?
Okay.
Do you need that? Yeah.
Okay, two more. 5406. Yee, 5406.
This needs to be announced.
This one is Lorraine Kelly's book.
Okay. Recently published. There you go. Local author.
Okay, last 5. Oh, two more. 5524. 5524. Oh, there we go. And very last one. How about 5399?
From the flower basket. She's from the flower basket. Oh, she's found more. Found one more.
This is from the flower basket. Do we have a 5399? There we go. Okay, the very last one.
Here, two tickets for the chili cook-off.
2 tickets for the chili
Donated
cook-off
by the Golden Isles.
by the Golden Isles.
Rotary.
Golden Isles Rotary. Okay, 5434. 5434. Is that it?
Last one.
Last one.
Surprise.
Last one. It's a surprise. 5509. 5509.
a mess, just dump it.
There it is.
That'd be fine.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all the wonderful people who donated those. That always makes it a lot of fun and extra special, and so congratulations to all those prize winners. Just a couple of announcements. You were handed a card when you came in. It would be a huge help. I'll be honest, we have done this for 10 years, and I thought, Lord, is it time to give this thing a rest? But from the response I've heard from all of you, I'm thinking, no, it's not, that God is up to something with this. And so we want to keep going, but we need your help. And so if you would like to get your church plugged in, or you'd just like to be part of our team, we have a lot of fun. We meet with women from all the different churches, and we would welcome your help with this. So just if you will sign that card, you can leave them up here on these tables. I think they've put baskets out at the exit or at right there. Just please fill those out. Tell us what church you're with and if you want to get on board and how we can get you plugged in and get your church more involved. And then I've had several of you ask me about having a copy of the talks. Now, I have not run this by our speakers, but if they're okay with it, we are going to make the recording available on our website. So you can go to giwc.info. We will hopefully have it up within the week, and just check that out and you can share it with your friends. And lastly, we've got a little card for you that'll give you a little reminder of some of the things that you've heard today. You can stick it in your Bible and just remember the conference. And so grab one of those on your way out. They should be in baskets out there or at this door. And I think that's it. So Daphne, come on.
My son helped me up last night. I guess I figured out myself. You know, I had a partial knee replacement. It's this last step. Okay. I did it. You know, I was so excited about coming. I really was. And before I start, you know, now I will say I have my little talk planned out. But I have to tell you, I'm not going to ask for any more introductions, but my daughter-in-law, the mother of the man farm, she's here, Missy. My granddaughter, Maddie, who has never heard me speak, she's here, and her friends. So it's a real honor to have my family support me this way. And you know, before I start, I have to tell you the weirdest thing that happened last night. To validate Anaheim, Bobby, where are you, Bobby? Is she still? Okay, stand up. She came up to me last night and she said, now, when were you at Anaheim? I said, February 1990. She said, was John Wimber there? I said, yes. And she said, Daphne, I was there. Now, can you believe that? She was at the same conference I went to. So I just have to tell you, God's pretty amazing. Well, you know, my little sweet husband couldn't come. I have to tell you this real quick because Satan is amazing. I mean, he'll just kind of destroy whatever he can. He had a stroke, and he was paralyzed on his right side. And we were at the hospital, and when it was 3 o'clock in the morning, he reached up to touch his face, and he said, he woke me up, he said, Daphne, I'm using my right hand. And the feeling began to come back. And we got a text from a friend of ours at church. My husband is very active, and he's got a servant's heart. She didn't even know what had happened, and she said, John, I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning praying that God would heal you. Isn't that amazing? So I found out this is going to be recorded so he gets to hear what I say about him. But you know, Anaheim was life-changing for me. And I'm going to tell you something. Rochelle is creating Anaheim for us right here today, isn't she? So, you know, you don't have to go out to California. You get to be right here and experience the same thing I did. You know, after Anaheim, my work life was also brushed by God. This is pretty amazing because, I mean, I knew that God was in the middle of everything. In fact, I started writing. I had never journaled a day in my life. And I started journaling on the way home from Anaheim knowing that God had his hand on me. And I journaled until I got married. And do you know that for without a doubt, God began to write our Southern Breeze on the way home from California? Because who would have ever thunk that a girl that quit learning in the 7th grade would have a book out there? But anyway, one morning I woke up at 4:30, and I thought I've either had an amazing dream or I've heard from God. Well, you know, after Anaheim, I pretty much put my hand on it. Must have been from God. I was so excited that I got a pen and paper, and I wrote down everything I saw. What I didn't even realize, that God was giving me a detailed plan of what he wanted me to do, and he was beginning to start a company for me. Now, can you believe that? Well, within a few weeks, I quit my job because I decided I was going to follow God's calling on my life. Now, remember, this was a girl that didn't learn past the 7th grade, and I'm getting brave enough to start a company of all things. Well, I purchased my business license at the end of December 1990. And January 1st, I became a company, DJ Consultants. Now, the crazy thing about it is I missed out that year that they taught us how to write business letters. And if you can imagine, I now am fearless, and I'm ready to start a company, and I don't even know how to write a business letter. I share some funny stories in my book about what all happened, but you know what? I was fearless. And I had gone through a time management workshop prior to this, that another job that I had, and it was exactly where my strengths were. So I hung my hat on that. I thought, well, I think I'm going to teach it a little bit differently, but they were using a book. The thing that was so amazing is that God began to show me a way. Now, people were using paper then, and they weren't using computers. But God showed me a way to help people file a different way. It wasn't so much that filing was not the problem. You could stick a piece of paper in a file, but getting it out was another problem. So it was the retrieval that people needed. So I began, now this is kind of hard to imagine, but I could close my eyes. I could open up a file and not have any idea what those words were. And I could close my eyes and begin to pray. And when I looked at those drawers, I began to see how I could bring like things together. And I mean, I was relying on God showing me how to develop these systems. And I had all these little words. I was calling them big home, middle home, little homes. I always had a name for stuff I was doing. But it was all coming from God. Now, I will say that once companies started using computers and I began to see how a computer worked, I realized that before I even knew how to turn on a computer, God had shown me how a computer files. Now, I'm not real technical, but I thought either they've stolen my idea. I mean, I wasn't sure how they got it, but that's how I'd been filing, and here a computer was doing it. Well, I changed a lot of the way people filed, but then eventually I was smart enough to know that as changes went along in companies, I had to make my change. So actually, we began doing everything we do in a computer, so it wasn't paper and books anymore, but it was all in the computer. My tagline, I knew I had to have one. It says, "We manage time and information." I thought that was pretty cute. Well, inevitably, as time changed, it didn't matter how many mistakes I made. And I'm telling you, I made so many. Deborah and I would always laugh, and she'd say, "God protects the foolish." Because, you know, God closed the eyes of these people so they wouldn't see how foolish I was. I mean, you know, the first year, I wanted to say thank you to all my clients And so I got all my invoices. Now, I'd be up till 3 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out how to do all this. But I started looking at all my invoices, and I had made a mistake on every one of them. But you know what? They were all paid on time. Nobody ever questioned. I guess, they just said, bless her heart, we'll just pay it anyway. But, my expectations of who my clients were, I thought, if someone has a big yellow page, I bet they're going to want my service. That's about where I thought my services would be. So, I'd start looking in yellow pages and looking for the big ads, and I thought, well, that's how I'm going to do it. Early on, and I know this is God's story, it's not mine, but I'm still amazed when I tell it. Doors began to open that I could have never opened myself. During this time, a friend of mine had given me tap dance lessons, of all things. Now, I think I was going to be a professional tap dancer. There's not a lot of money when you're 70 years old to be out tapping. But anyway, I gave those shoes up a long time ago. But, we were there to learn to tap, so we never really did know much about each other. But one of the women missed a lot of lessons, and one time I was walking out with her. And I said, Diane, why do you miss so many lessons? She said, you know what, I am so overwhelmed. I'm thinking about quitting my job. I said, well, what's the problem? She said, I can't manage my time or information. I said, hey, I just started my company, and that's what I do. And she said, well, I don't have much money in my budget left. I only have $200. Well, I tried not to act excited, but she didn't realize that was a lot of money to me. I was like, $200? Well, so I went and worked with her, and it was pretty amazing what I was able to accomplish. But again, I'm relying on God to help me. Well, when she finished and she got ready to pay me, she said, you know what? Let me pay you the rest. I wasn't even real sure who she worked for. I asked so few questions. I just kind of went in blindly. If someone was tiring me, I'll just go work. Well, she worked for Estee Lauder. She was a regional manager. And she said, look, I want to pay you, besides the $200, I want to pay you in product. Missy got a little bit of that, didn't you? I walked out. I bet with $1,000 worth of product in a bag. I'd never been able to afford to buy anything but cheap lipstick and cheap stuff. And here I am walking out with all this Estee Lauder stuff. I cried all the way home. I thought, I will never get to do something like this again. I thought, I'm going back to the yellow pages, I guess. Well, I guess it was about maybe several weeks later, she called me and she said, you know what? I found some more money. Would you come and work with my regional office and do for them what you did for me? I worked there for a week. It was amazing. Again, I'm opening up these drawers. I don't even know what these people are doing. I'm bringing like things together. I'm asking questions. They think I'm magical. They don't know that it's God that's telling me what to do. It's like, well, let me tell you where the magic really comes from. Well, I wasn't quite that brave then. But it was just amazing that they had hired me. Now, again, I didn't have any idea what was getting ready to happen. My career was getting ready to change 100%. This is hard for me to even comprehend and understand. Sometime later, she called and she said, Daphne, put your hat on. You're getting ready to travel. She said, Estee Lauder wants to send you all over the United States for you to do what you did in my office to do in every regional office in the country. Can you imagine? Mrs. Lauder was very generous with her money for women. I'd get picked up in a limo, black limo, early on Monday mornings. I would be returned Friday night in a limo. I think my neighbors probably thought I was a prostitute. It's like, whatever. But, it was amazing. Now, it wasn't long after that they said, now we want you to come to Manhattan and work at the corporate office. Well, I had never traveled. I'd never been anywhere. But this Snyder girl was getting ready to change. Now, I want to tell you this story. I don't have enough time. I'm going to tell you anyway. I didn't do anything. They planned all my flights. They planned my hotel, you know. I'd get there, and I'd have time enough on Monday morning to drop off my luggage and go to the corporate office. Well, I was on Central Park South, staying at the Essex House. Does anybody know where that is? Pretty beautiful place. Well, I get there one time, and they say, oh, we don't have a room for you. Well, I'm not even paying for it. I said, oh, well, that's okay. And she said, well, we'll have one when you get back. I said, well, okay, fine, you know, whatever. I get back. They escort me into a suite. There's a basket of fruit, and I'm thinking, you got to be kidding. What is this all about? Well, they just treated me like a queen. So when it was time for me to leave, I called the bell captain and asked for help with my luggage, and they came in with this big bouquet of flowers. And I said, enough is enough. And he said, well, they're not for you. I mean, I just kind of turned white. I thought, I better keep my mouth shut. Well, it was pretty amazing how many things were happening. I had worked with a man at the time management company that I worked for, and he had made a presentation to Pfizer, also in Manhattan, 42nd Street. They said, now listen to this, we really don't need your time management book. What we need is someone to help us with paper. And he said, well, I have a person that can help you. They called me. I worked. They used me so much that I began to have to hire people to come in and help. Can you believe this? Nice little Snyder girl. Here I am, not really feeling like a big shot, being scared silly that someone's going to find out how little I really know. But after being exhausted, I mean, I traveled nearly every week. And after being totally exhausted, one time I was at the ranch visiting Deborah and Ron, and they said, you're there every week. Why don't you move to Manhattan? This Snyder girl moving to Manhattan? I thought, you've got to be kidding. Well, I thought, well, why not? I'm brave now. I'm a big girl. God's on my side. So really, only God could have carried me through this next part of my life. I'll never forget how he renewed me. I became living proof from this sentence of God, from God, 1 Corinthians 15:10. But whatever I am now, it is all because God poured out his special favor on me. Because none of this could have been me, none of it. Deborah was there to help me move. Her daughter was already living in Manhattan, so the first night we stayed with her. And I stayed awake all night. I kept thinking, you've got to be kidding. I had sold my home, my car, and packed up, and I was getting ready to live in Manhattan. Well, Deborah met me at the LaGuardia Airport, and we spent the night with Reagan, and we got up early the next morning because in the apartment, you had just a certain time that you could use elevators, so we were scared the movers were going to be late. So we got there early and just kind of waiting around. Well, they brought everything. Now, Deborah, the boss of me, she was standing at the door saying, oh, this can't come in, this can't come in. It's like, wait a minute, this is my home. But she was telling me what I could and couldn't have still. All of a sudden, they're about ready to get paid. And I said, and they brought in, the last thing they brought in was a beautiful iron bed that Deborah had helped me pick out. And I said, wait a minute, where's the footboard? And they said, well, ma'am, this is the last thing on the truck. And I said, I'm going to tell you something. You're not leaving. Now, this was the Christian in me. You're not leaving until we find that headboard. And I mean, they were making calls all over looking for that headboard. Well, Deborah and I were holding them hostage. They weren't leaving. Finally, they got tired. And I mean, these two men were so exhausted, and we were being so unchristian. Finally, they said, look, let's just put the bed together. At least you'll have a place to sleep until they can find the footboard. I said, okay, fine. One guy's on the front of the bed, others on the end of the bed. Deborah's on one side, I'm on the side. making sure they're doing the right thing. All of a sudden, one of the men says, "Man, this never had a footboard." Deborah looked at me and I looked at her, and it was like, it didn't. All of a sudden I started crying. I said, "I am so sorry for the way we've treated you. I guess just my nervousness, I just forgot. And it never did have one." So I tipped them big and sent them on their way. Well, it just went on and on and on. But for lack of time, there are so many funny stories. I'll tell you what I learned. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be ashamed of yourself. Learn to laugh. And so what I did, so many crazy things were happening that I decided I'd just start writing them down. And so I put those funny stories, those funny New York, and I don't have time to tell them to you, but they are funny, and I put them in my book. But I recorded one miracle after another as I was during this time in New York. And I didn't even realize that God was writing the story along the way. Soon after I got to Manhattan, I got a call from Deborah. She had been to the doctor for her yearly checkup. And she just had a pain in her tummy. We always kind of went about the same time. The year before, we had decided not to have a colonoscopy. I don't even know why we chose not to, but we just said, let's just don't have one. Well, the doctor was punching on her tummy, and there was some tenderness, and he said, well, this shouldn't be. But it didn't take but about a week for us to find out she had stage 4 liver cancer, and the reports were bleak. I mean, they were horrible. And I kept thinking, has that southern breeze quit blowing? What's going on, God? She is my twin sister. The sad thing about it, she really became my God. I worshiped the ground she walked on. And we were on like a honeymoon after Anaheim. We were getting to know each other in ways that we never had. I watched her suffer and fight for her life for 19 months. She knew where she was heading, but she didn't get to see her son and daughter marry. She didn't get to see any of the grandchildren that she and Ron had prayed for. And she really wanted to live. And I just didn't understand what was going on. I wasn't prepared. I pray that if I have to go through anything like that again, I'm in a different place than I was then. But when we buried Deborah, my heart was broken. I'm thankful for the last 2 birthdays we had together. And in my book, there is a picture of our last birthday. And we knew that year was going to be our last one, and it was not easy at all. And I struggled why God hadn't healed her. There were times I thought, did I not pray hard enough? Did I not pray long enough? There were people that were praying for Deborah around the clock. There were people that would circle the house, and they would pray for her healing. And we just assumed she was going to live. But she didn't. And most of my life, I wanted to be like Deborah. I just didn't think I was good enough. She'd be up at 4:30 in the morning praying and interceding for people. She memorized the name of every homeless person that came through that line at the mission. And I thought I should be like her. I wouldn't be good enough if I wasn't Deborah. But to even make my grieving worse, I recorded our last conversations together on the phone. And every day, I would listen to her voice. And I would, even though it got weaker as time went on, I guess I liked making myself miserable, and I would listen to him. One day, I was getting ready to rewind, and I deleted it. And I thought, well, I'm never going to hear her voice again. And I was devastated. Well, it was about a year later, all of a sudden I heard myself laugh, something I thought I'd never do again. And it was at that time that God whispered into my heart, and he said, now I'm going to show you who you are. I didn't make a mistake when I created you. I was no longer a half person, and that was pretty an amazing feeling for me. I was ready to face the world with a new attitude. To make my story complete, I want to share how that southern breeze blew over my family. Soon after Deborah and I returned from Anaheim, our mom and dad had been in a nursing home for 10 years with Alzheimer's. They actually went in there when they were 70. Praise God, I'm 70 and I'm still got somewhat of a mind. But Deborah took care of them for 10 years. And even though the responsibility wasn't easy, she knew that she was the only one of the three of us that could. When I'd go see my mother and dad in the nursing home, my dad would start crying the minute he saw me. And he would put his arms around me, and he would tell me how much he loved me and how proud he was of me. We never discussed why he was so cruel and mean to me, but I knew his heart was broken, and I knew it was time to forgive him. What had caused all those things to happen didn't matter anymore. I literally said, it's over. And you know, Rochelle talks about that. We have to let those things go. It hurts me. It wasn't hurting my daddy, it was hurting me to have the anger and the sadness in my heart. God's promised southern breeze was also blowing over Denise, my daughter, and John Kevin, as you all like to call John. 5 years after marriage, Denise had her first baby, Millicent. She was 10 days late, and she was born on my birthday. Can you imagine? I mean, they were just like minutes. But you know, God already knew that I wasn't going to have a twin sister and that I needed someone to celebrate my birthday with. Now, the only difference is I thought, will we ever get to have a birthday without a character cake? I mean, you know, there was always a princess or somebody in the middle. You know, it was never just me. It was always a character. Well, she actually gave her my middle name, Marie. She held her, Greg held her, and she asked me if I would be the third person to put her in my arms. Now, that's a lot of forgiveness from a child who didn't have a mother. Being a nurturing mom came so natural to her. The first time I saw her nurse Millicent, I had to run out of the room so she wouldn't see me crying. It was something that I had never experienced. I didn't even know how to love my baby that way. And here she was. Now, God is amazing. She didn't need her mother to teach her. God taught her how to be a nurturing mom. Well, the first, let's see, where am I? Y'all start crying, and then I don't want that to happen. The first Christmas after, and you know, the reason I kind of follow my nose is because I'd be off on a rabbit's trail. I got about 1,000 stories I want to tell, so I have to kind of keep myself in place. But after Millicent was born, Denise said, Mom, do you think there's any way that we can have Christmas together as a family? That's with her father and his wife. Well, it wasn't easy, but you know what? We needed to be a family. Children don't ask for divorces. It's the children that suffer. You can fall in love again, but it's the children. And you know what? It got to the point where we were together all the time. We'd be in dancing recitals together, and the more we were together, the easier it became. Well, 5 years later, little Maddie was born. And you know, what a precious child she was. Smart as a whip. Funny personality. Now, her sister's a little bit serious, but Maddie kind of lives on the edge. She likes to live life to its fullest. But you know what happened? The child abuse stopped it was no longer in our family. It had ended completely. So see, I'm telling you, y'all, I'm living testimony. Rochelle's up here with all the God talk. She knows what she's talking about. All I can tell you is what happened to me. But you know, it's confirmation that what she is saying is truth. Well, after John Kevin graduated from college, he decided he wanted to go to dental school, and then he wanted to be an orthodontist. He may not remember this, but I don't forget anything when it comes to my kids. We were all together, and he came back, and you know, his mother said, I want to hear everything. From the minute you get, he went for an interview. I said, I want to hear everything. He said, you know, Mom, the strangest thing happened. One of the doctors asked who my hero was. And I started laughing. I said, well, who on earth did you say? He said, Mom, I told him you were. And I said, why would you say me? And he said, I am so proud of what you've done with your life. Now, is that probably the sweetest and biggest compliment anybody can pay a mom? Y'all, that's why it was so important last night that he was here to introduce his mom. And you could see that came from his heart. Now, I gotta quit crying. Isn't this silly? Well, John married his college sweetheart, Missy. I remember the first time I heard about Missy, he said, Mom, you're not going to believe this girl that's in my class. She had a red sweater on. Told me exactly how she looked. They dated all the time that they were both in school, and then they got married, and then they've given us 5 boys. And definitely, with that man farm and my other 2 granddaughters, that southern breeze is still blowing. You know, my children, wait just a minute. Let me get my children had forgiven me. And you know who the hardest person is to forgive yourself. And you all have talked to me, several of you have. I still can cry. But you know what? I know that God has restored so much that I don't really have to cry anymore. It's just tears of things that I missed out on is more than anything, because I am truly, truly a blessed woman. Well, after John Kevin and Missy moved here for him to start his practice, I got a call from my daughter. Their daddy and his wife had been to see them and help them move into their apartment. They were on their way on a motorcycle to Jacksonville, and they were in a horrible, horrible accident. Denise called and said, Mom, it doesn't look like Dad's going to make it. Please come and be with us. Well, it was really, really hard to be there, but I was part of that family. And I had an opportunity before they took him off of life support. We were able to go in and say goodbye. And I asked if I could go in with his wife. She was already there, but I just asked her if she would please be with me when I was with him. And I prayed and I thanked God that she was able to take over the role of a mother when I wasn't. And I said goodbye to my high school sweetheart, and she said goodbye to a husband that she had loved dearly for many years. And it was a real loss for us, for him to die. On the way home, I rode with John Kevin back here, and he started crying, and he said, Mom, I wrote a letter to Dad thanking him for all the things that he had done for me, and I never mailed it. And I said, well, honey, go find that letter. Well, he found it. Because of his wife's injuries were so severe, they had to wait quite a few months before they had his memorial service. He stood up and he read that letter to his dad. There wasn't a dry in the bunch. It was the sweetest thing. One thing it told a lot of people, don't wait. to say the things that need to be said. You never know when you may not have another chance. Well, let me just kind of see where I am. You know, things were certainly changing in my life. I really thought that I would never have a husband again. I had made 2 big mistakes, and I thought, how could I possibly deserve a husband? Well, little did I know that God planted me in the soil of a very loving man who had been divorced and single for 33 years. We met on eHarmony of all places. Can you imagine? Now, listen to this, y'all. He was a retired truck driver. I'm living on 79th and York in New York, and I'm thinking I'm a big shot. If I ever did get married, I'd be married to some kind of executive. God has a sense of humor because he knew exactly who I needed. Well, it wasn't long after we started dating that John said, you need to make things right with your sister Gretchen. You know, all I did was talk about Deborah, but he knew there was a Gretchen in our family. And he said, for us to go forward in our relationship, you don't want to be dragging any burdens into our relationship. That's a pretty wise man if you want to know him. Well, instead of being angry, I wrote Gretchen a letter, and I asked her to please forgive me. Deborah and I had treated her exactly like Deborah had treated me before Anaheim. We judged her, we made fun of her, we criticized her, and she quickly forgave me. Well, when John Angelo and I decided that we were getting close to being married, first of all, this is such a sweet thing, because he knew my past. Now, he's going to hear this, and he's going to be so mad because I think it's recorded. But for some reason, this Italian man, God had given him the gift of celibacy for 33 years, something he didn't ask for and something he didn't question. Do you know, he said, God wants me to present you holy at the altar. Can you believe that? He guarded me. Now, some people thought we were kind of crazy, but you know what? I think God saved him for me. That was the sweetest gift. After what I had been through, had never really felt like I was worthy to be respected as a woman. And here a man wanted to present me holy. Well, this is a sweet one. When we decided to get married, he ordered my ring. When it came in, we were in Seaside. Well, I wanted that ring spout. I could hardly stand it. It didn't sound real romantic, but he said, okay, I'll just ship it to you by FedEx. Well, I wanted my kids to see the ring. So I said, okay, fine. Now, I think I'm going to be over a little bit. I'm going to try not to be. But anyway, FedEx man comes. Now, my kids already knew this. I was so busy grabbing for the ring, I failed to look. It was my husband, my future husband. He was dressed up. He came all the way from New Jersey, flew in, rented a truck, had a little uniform that he had borrowed, had a beard, and all of a sudden I looked up and there was my future husband giving me my ring. Well, you know, I know the kids were nervous because of all the mistakes that I had made, but they saw how much this man loved me, and they fell in love with him too. Well, let me kind of get down here a little bit further. Jump down now. It's time for us to get married. Gretchen came. I had not seen her since Deborah died. So 3 years had passed. Gretchen came for the wedding. We were so excited to be together as sisters. John was so excited he was going to get to have a sister, and we had a glorious week. You know, the sad thing about it, is that all of our family was there. I woke up that morning of our wedding with that heavy cloud that I thought I'd left at Anaheim was back. I was so sad, so depressed. And it was like Satan was saying, you're not worthy to be a bride. You're not worthy to be married in a church. Because John, if he could have worn the wedding gown, he would have. He was so excited. He planned the whole thing. Wanted to take me to Paris. I mean, this man was so fired up. I was ready to run off. No. He wants a big old wedding. Well, I cried and I cried and I cried, and I thought, this is my wedding day. But Satan was doing a number on me, just letting me know I wasn't worthy to be a bride, not with all my mistakes. John had ordered a limo to pick me up. Still, I'm sad. I get to the church, the front doors open, and I was told that the light was so bright that you could only see a silhouette of me. And at that very moment, I looked down and I saw my future husband crying. And it was God whispered in my heart, and he said, you're worthy. You're worthy to be his bride. I giggled all the way down that aisle. I mean, I don't know what happened, but I went from crying to laughing, and I laughed all the way down to the front of the church. Harry's crying, I'm laughing my heart out. But you know, it was the sweetest wedding. And you know, I'm telling you, having him as my husband has been pretty amazing. The man calls me his beloved. He calls me his princess. Now, we're like oil and water. I'm a Southern girl. He's a Yankee and an Italian at that. But God knew exactly why we needed to be together. Gretchen leaves the wedding, and it wasn't long after I get a call. And she said, are you Daphne? And I said, yes. And she said, your sister Gretchen is dead. She was found dead in her apartment. She had died of congestive heart failure. I was just paralyzed. I thought, how could this have happened? I mean, we were planning for her trip to come. Well, we decided we would have her buried in Luling, Texas, next to my mother and dad. Before we left, I thought, what? I've got to find something for her to wear. I mean, what would you bury her in? Deborah wore, the last gift I gave her at our birthday were white piqué pajamas. We called them our jammies, and she loved those. She chose to be buried in those white jammies. Well, I thought, gosh, I mean, what am I going to get for Gretchen? I thought, well, do I dress her up in a cocktail dress? I mean, it was just horrible, and I was crying everywhere we went. I was just sobbing, and finally John said, forget it, I'm going to do it. He said, I'm going to go find her a pair of jammies and slippers. And then he said, we've got to get her bra and panties. I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Why would we even know what size bra and panties to buy? But you know, we bought them, and I guess they fit her. I didn't check it out, but she did wear her jammies. But, you know, it was finally clear to me that if God had healed Deborah, there would have been a great celebration in Fort Worth and Dallas, but it would have soon been forgotten. But her love for Denver and the homeless changed things completely. In Romans 9:17, it helped me understand God's plan. I raised Deborah up for this very purpose, that I might display my power in her, that my name might be proclaimed in all the earth. And here is a movie coming out about my twin sister. Can you believe that? Family history doesn't have to be our future. God wants us transformed by the way we think. The southern breeze that God promised Deborah and me is for everyone. He does not show favorites. I know that that southern breeze will keep blowing far and wide, melting frozen hearts and broken and fractured families and relationships. And I think maybe some of you have found yourself in my story. I know already some of you have shared that you have. Like I was for so many years, have you hidden behind a mask of shame? for whatever reason, feeling you're not worthy? Have you listened to the lies that you've been told by yourself or other people that you're not any good? God didn't make mistakes when He created us. Is there a Gretchen in your life? Don't ever let things go. Can you imagine the guilt that I would have felt if that relationship had not been restored and she died? I would have been grieving for the rest of my life. But you know what? My sweet husband spoke at her funeral. I left her graveside having no regrets, thanking God for a restored relationship. Maddie, I don't want to embarrass you. Would you come stand with me? Can you believe this beautiful girl? I'm going to pray right now, okay? Heavenly Father, I am honored and blessed that you took my brokenness and using it for good. Only you can make us whole. Thank you, God, that you are a God of second chances. Forgive me for any unforgiveness that any of us may be holding on to, and help us show others how much you love us. God, I thank you for your sweet southern breeze. I love you and ask you to let it keep blowing. In your precious name I pray. Amen. Successful. I'm going to have this silly thing done again. Can you believe that?